meeting of the Neighborhood and Community Improvement Commission to order. Let's see, do you want to call roll call?
Okie doke. Aguajito Oaks.
I'm here.
Alta Mesa.
Here.
Casanova Oak Knoll.
Here.
Deer Flats. Deer Flats.
Here.
Okie doke. Thanks, Dave. Del Monte Beach.
Here.
Del Monte Grove Laguna Grande.
Here.
Downtown.
Here.
Fisherman Flats.
Here.
Glenwood.
I saw her on a minute ago.
Glenwood.
Glenwood's here. She's on mute.
There we are. Glenwood.
Here, present.
Gotcha. Thanks, Lee. Monterey Vista.
Here.
New Monterey. New Monterey. Oak Grove.
Here.
Old Town.
Here.
Skyline.
Hello. Here.
Villa Del
I'm
Monte.
the alternate. Oh, there.
Oh, sorry, Villa Del Monte. What are you doing? Thank you. Alrighty.
I think we have a couple alternates here as well, so let's just make sure that we identify them in the minutes that they've been present as well.
Yep,
Hans
will do.
from and like Richard or
I have an alternate and she was going to call in. I don't know if she's showing. I got it. Amanda Pierce.
Yep, I'm here.
Okay.
Tom Raleigh, Fisherman's Flats here.
Hi, Tom.
okay.
From downtown.
Yeah, Bella is here
All
also
right.
from downtown.
If we start
Great.
getting feedback or anything and start getting noises, I'll ask you all to mute. But for right now, we seem to be okay. So you want to go ahead with agenda item 1, introduction of the Neighborhood Improvement Committee representatives and alternates.
Yes, let's start with that. Everybody can hear me. Good evening and welcome back to the NCIP programs. Tonight's Thursday, July 8th, 2021, the first meeting that we've had since COVID emergency began last March. The first, we did the roll call was the first item on our agenda, but we just wanted to go through, I guess, introduce the new members. Is that what we're talking about, Rick, or just everyone?
I don't know. I didn't create the agenda, so I'm not sure what it was.
Let's go. One of the things we wanted to do is just highlight that we have several new members who've joined in the last year. From Del Monte Grove, Joseph Hill is new. From Glenwood, Amanda Priest is also new, and I know Amanda's on. We just heard her.
Yay.
From New Monterey, William Whipple also joined. And from Villa Del Monte, Tammy Jennings is also back on NCIP committee starting tonight. So that would take care of agenda item number 1.
Okay. So we'll move on to next item is approval of the minutes from February of 2020. And I'm sure everyone remembers everything that was done in that meeting. It was only yesterday.
Yeah, right.
Does anyone have any additions or changes? Did everyone have a chance to look at the minute?
I read them, but like you said, I don't remember everything.
I'll entertain a motion for approval of the minutes. I don't believe we need to have public comments on minutes, so.
Okay.
I'll second.
So who made the original motion?
Dennis.
Dennis? Okay, and the second was?
Jean.
Just so Alyssa knows, it's the challenge with this is figuring out who does what, who's on first base. Okay, any additional comments on the minutes? If not, do we need to do a roll call for minutes?
We should do a roll call for minutes.
Okay, Alyssa,
Alyssa,
can
can
you
you do
roll
that?
call,
Yes.
please?
Are you with us, Alyssa?
I'm sorry, so I'm not familiar
Oh, we just have to
Do a
do a
roll
roll
call
call
for
for
each
the
vote.
minutes.
for all of our attendees. So
Yeah.
just listing
Or
off
just-
everybody's name.
The neighborhoods, yeah.
Oh, the neighborhood, sorry about that. So Aguajito Oaks,
Yeah, I approve.
okay. Alta Mesa,
Yes,
Casanova Oak Knoll,
Yes.
Deer Flats.
Approve.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that, Deer Flats?
Approve.
Perfect, thank you. Del Monte Beach,
Yes.
Del Monte Grove Laguna Grande,
Yes.
Downtown,
Yes.
Fisherman Flats,
Yes.
Glenwood,
Yes,
Monterey Vista,
Yes.
Oak Grove,
Yes.
Old Town, Old Town,
she's nodding her head.
okay.
oh. Oh, did I get muted?
No,
I think-
actually, you weren't.
Okay,
But sorry, April, so that was
It's
was that
okay.
a yes from you? April,
I'm sorry.
was that a yes? From you?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay. No, it's okay. I just need to hear to make sure. Skyline,
Yeah, sure, you betcha.
Villa Del Monte.
Yes.
Okey doke.
Okay, it's unanimous. The minutes have been approved. Next item is public comments. Any member of the public may speak on an item, on anything that's within the purview of the NCIP for 3 minutes. At this point in time, let's see, we'll switch up the attendees. There's only 2 members of the public. Do Tom or Mayor Clyde wish to do public comments?
Let me, just also before we go, there's a script that I know we have to read
okay.
before we do public comment. So let me get
Okay.
that done just to keep us on track here. So we have this says new public process in place for public participation, but now it's over a year old at this point. But we encourage members of the public to join our meeting via Zoom Gov, which is a secure service for use by government agencies. Joining on Zoom is preferred because there is no lag time. You're connected live to the meeting in real time. This meeting is also streamed live on youtube.com/City of Monterey with a delay of approximately 10 seconds, and also on Comcast Channel 25 with a delay of up to 90 seconds. If you plan to make a public comment, please join the meeting using Zoom Gov on the app or by telephone, making sure you join in time to accommodate the delay. To join the meeting on Zoom on your computer or phone, use the link or phone number on the agenda at isearchmonterey.org. And since this meeting has already begun, you'll find the agenda under the recent tab, not the upcoming tab. To join by telephone, dial 833-568-8864, which is a toll-free number, and then enter the meeting ID, which is 161-598-7526, and then the hashtag or pound symbol. If prompted to enter a participant ID, please press the pound symbol once again. And just if you need them, detailed instructions on using Zoom are available at monterey.org/public meetings. To make a public comment, please raise your hand using Zoom. Or if you are connected by phone, please dial *9 to raise your hand and then *6 to unmute yourself. Public commenters will be muted until it is their turn to speak. We ask that the public commenters turn off TV or computer speakers or go to another room while connected by phone, as any background noise will interfere with the broadcast. Each public speaker will be called on in the order that their hands were raised. The chair has designated a 3-minute time limit for today's meeting, with the countdown timer shown on the screen, I believe. If you are connected live on Zoom, the timer is accurate with no delay. Please stay within your time limit so that you won't need to be cut off. And we look forward to receiving your public comment tonight.
Okay. Go back to opening public comment, and does any member of the public wish to comment on any item not on the NCIP agenda? I've got one member of the public with a hand raised, Mayor Roberson. How does he get unmuted?
We shall.
Oh, I see how. I think I can do that.
Oh, good.
Right, am I unmuted, folks?
You're unmuted.
Well, yeah, even though you might want to mute me, but before I'm done. Hey, here we are, we made it, you all. And the first thing I want to do is just give you a huge thank you for helping us through this last year. You are appreciated. This committee is not taken for granted, I assure you. And it's going to be interesting going forward. Our city council has done some hybrid meetings where we were in person at our last meeting, and we were also on Zoom. And I've noticed it's probably awkward, but we'll see where we go from here. A lot depends on the state. A lot's going to depend, of course, on the Delta Plus and other variants. You have your budget back. We were just absolutely delighted. Our staff worked extremely hard to get a budget together and to fund the NCIP. That's on your agenda later about your new name. And so I'm looking at your agenda. I really do understand the challenge you have ahead of you. Your old projects, your new projects, what do you prioritize? How are you going to process all these? Fortunately, you're a very bright group of people. You work well together, and you've got an outstanding staff that can help you. And I just wanted to check in and say, thank you, everyone. I'll be in and out watching your meeting and see how you tackle the issues. You have extra money this year because of the passage of Measure J. Once we get to our new normal, whatever that's going to be, and we have a budget that isn't balanced by the federal government. We balanced the budget this year with $6.5 million of stimulus money. That's one-time money. But if you've been out on our town, if you've been out and about, you can tell that this is one busy place and people are really ready to come back to Monterey. And going forward, it's my hope that that increment from Measure J, the increase of TOT from 10% to 12%, that delta will help us to start tackling some of the infrastructure that we need to tackle, which is a national discussion. And I know the NCIP has been very instrumental over the years, 35 years now, I think, Richard, in helping with city infrastructure projects. So I just wanted to tune in and just give you a big thank you. And I look forward to seeing how you resolve all the issues that are facing you. So thank you, staff. Thank you, members. And thank you, public. It's just an honor to be the mayor of this city with so many caring people.
Thank you, Mayor. Any other members of the public who wish to address the panel? And I'm going to be real quick here since the only other member of the public is Tom. At this point, I'll close public comment and we'll move on to agenda item number 3. Which is orientation of neighborhood and community improvement program and parking permits and overview of NCIP process.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I will just briefly go through and describe the program. We have an unusual situation this year, as we all know. It's just trying to get things back on track. The program was paused by City Council last year to meet our emergency funding issues during the COVID and pandemic. Funding was taken from many of the approved projects that you all have worked on over the last 35 years, as the mayor said. We are looking to find a procedure and a process for refunding those projects that funding was taken from. Funding last year was diverted from the approved projects into the essential services that the city had when the pandemic started. So just speaking generally, the process of approving projects usually takes about 6 months. So just realizing that we, the staff at least, are not expecting to have everything finalized this evening. We're thinking of this as kind of a kickoff again to begin discussing projects and some of the details that you all are interested in discussing over the next several months. If we stick with that 6-month process, we'll be complete with the projects and figure out which ones will be able to be refunded and within, with probably in the fall and that sort of period. So that's what staff is thinking. Again, this is up to you, and it's a discussion that we're interested in hearing what your thoughts are on it. Well, that's kind of the overview. Parking permits were mentioned. As required, Alyssa informed me this afternoon that she will be sending out a link this evening. If you do not have a parking permit, please follow up with Alyssa when she sends that. She will be sending tonight after the meeting just links to sign up for the parking permits so that you can go out and review this project sites before we discuss which ones will be returned to funding again. And then also she'll be sending out a contact list for the committee members so that we all have each other's contact information. That's kind of just the general comments that I had. I know it's not very thorough, but are there any questions on that?
Does anyone have any questions on a couple of things? We haven't decided yet what the process is going to be for bringing defunded projects back. That's later on in the agenda, or how, if any, new projects we might be doing. That's also later in the agenda. So this is kind of just the overall generic aspect of the program itself. Anyone have any questions, or shall we just move on? Dave, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so that was a question. I apologize. I've been somewhat remiss in keeping up to speed with NTIP of late. And are there new projects? Actually, I mean, the system is sort of open. Are there like new project nominations that are there before the committee and we're just not going to consider those now? I'm just a little more discussion on what, the process would be for any new projects.
To me, what I'm envisioning, no, there have not been any solicitation of new projects yet. We do have a budget. So I think I think it's incumbent on us. I think potentially tonight, if we can come to terms on it, we need to decide what approach we want to take. For example, we could say we're only going to fund defunded projects first, not take anything new until all those are funded. We could say we're going to allocate X percentage of the budget to redo ones and take new projects. But we could say we're not going to refund any of those old ones and only take new. So, I mean, there's a lot of different ways we could go. I think the goal is tonight to come away with how we're going to proceed. And are we going to have new projects, or are we, and if so, how is it going to work?
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Rick, I have a question. Lee Whitney from Glenwood.
Go ahead, Lee.
Will we be forming some kind of a schedule for future meetings so we can start setting our time aside to go through all these projects?
It's a good point. It's not on the agenda, but we'll need to. And I think part of it will be how we come out of this meeting of, if we're doing new projects and taking things, yes, we'll have to have a schedule to cover those. If it's 100% of the funding going to refund old ones, it may not be as many meetings. So I think we kind of need to figure out where we're going first, and then we can figure out volume of meetings. I mean, the manual has a schedule, but it's kind of out the window right now because we're already in July, and yeah, everything's different this year.
Cool, thanks.
Yep, you're welcome. And by the way, at the end of the day, it's what you all decide. It's not just me saying something. So,
Rick,
yes,
It's
Jean, go
April.
ahead.
I have a technical question.
Sure.
Do I have to raise my hand technically to ask something, or how do we?
It's helpful to raise your hand. That way we don't, I can call on people, we can keep it moving smooth, but
What do I push on the screen? Because I'm sort of new at all of this.
if you bring your mouse down to the bottom of your screen, it should open up a little menu bar. And one of the choices is raise hand.
I don't see that on my menu.
Okay, in which case then, that's the way it's working for me. So I mean, put this way,
Yeah.
also just raise your hand on the screen. I can see you all.
Okay,
For those
alrighty,
who have
thank
video
you.
going, we can do it that way too.
Okay,
Right now,
thank
I've
you.
got Jean with their hand up.
Okay.
And then I'll come back to you, April.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Jean?
I was practicing, sorry.
Okay, so April, you
Oh, that's okay.
question?
Yeah, I mean, I tried this the other day and I go, okay, how do I do that? Yeah, I would hope, I think it'll become clear to all of us as we start going through these. We all probably have opinions already on how we should proceed, but seems to me that the defunded programs from the spreadsheet that we picked up are some that go back to 2000. And
I don't want to cut you off, but that is an agenda item. That's
okay,
number
alrighty, that's fine.
Perfect. So that way, and we can actually take action at that point too. Right now, we're in the informational reports. Any other questions on process? Then we'll move on to number 4, which is conflict of interest rules. Tom?
Thank you. And just very quickly, the conflict of interest, if you own property within 500 feet of a project, you are not allowed to vote on the project. There are exceptions to that, but they would have to go through the FPPC, I always get that wrong, the Fair Political Practices Commission. So it's a process. We need a letter from them stating that they agree that enacting or approving a project will not affect your property values or things like that. 500 feet is a hard no. If a project is occurring within 500 feet of your home or a business property that you own, you cannot vote on it. If it's within 1,000 feet of your the property that you own, it becomes more of a gray area, in which case we'll take a closer look at it and determine whether there's really an impact. We spoke to the city attorney just this week on this, and she said, you know, if we're redoing street signs like throughout the city, that's really not going to affect anyone's property value. So this is just a requirement from the state to do this. So are there any questions on that?
Okay. Not seeing any hands up.
Okay.
Okay. Let's move on to item 5. Presentation of our budget for the fiscal year 21-22. How much do we have to work with?
That's a great question, and we're still trying to get an accurate answer for you. At this point, we're assuming that it will be $2 to $3 million. Right now, we've been working with finance to identify what that's going to be. Finance, as you are maybe aware, the finance, we are searching. There's an open recruitment for finance director currently, so we're operating without a director. And our assistant finance director is also on leave at the moment. So we're working to get some answers on that. One of the issues that did come up is in the budget that was approved by City Council last month, it was highlighted that $3.3 million would be coming back to the NCIP program. This would be for projects beginning on July 1st of next year. So again, following the past practice, we're looking at the projects right now. We're analyzing them. We're like identifying which ones will be funded. And then the funding will be available starting July of next year. So that is the kind of the short answer, which isn't accurate.
So in other words, we have about 3.3 million, but the reality is if we were to say, okay, we're going to get started with this group of projects that was defunded, it won't actually start until July of next year.
Correct.
Okay.
And of the 3.3 as well, some of that will go to other things in the past. We were looking at.
Yeah, you skim off the top for administrative and a few other things. Yes.
There's yes, contingency and property purchasing and things like that as well.
Well,
So,
the generally in the past, what's happened is there's been an allocation for administrative and overhead, which comes off the top. The opportunity buying fund is a pre-existing project that was defunded, so it would have to be on the list to bring back. Contingency was also defunded, so we would have to decide to allocate some amount to contingency to help cover other ones too. So, because in effect, it's a project that was defunded as well.
Good.
Richard.
Yeah, so this would mean that we would not have a program from January to May next year then, if we're already deciding what's going to happen next July. Is that correct?
Well, not necessarily. Let's say this is all hypotheticals. If we said we're going to put 100% of the funding to fund defunded ones, there wouldn't be a project next year because all the money is already allocated. If we said 50% of the money is going to new projects and 50% is going to defunded ones, we would have a we would have a process to spend that, to allocate that 50%. When we would start that project, I think it's what we'd have to decide. Does it go like the normal cycle at that point? And, we start taking requests at the end of this year, and then we start meeting the beginning of next year to allocate that money. Hopefully that answers your question.
I have one more point.
Okay.
And that is, I looked at the list of projects that were defunded and the amounts, and I know lumber's gone up 300%. Oil is doubled. That means asphalt's doubled. And all the other costs are just skyrocketing. So when we get around to making decisions, we need to get real figures.
And I think we will need to make sure we have plenty of contingency set aside because we won't have real figures at the time we're doing the decision. So, but Kurt, your hands up. You're on mute, Kurt.
You mentioned that there was between $2 to $3 million, but they're not sure yet because he's working with finance. And then he mentioned the 3.3 million for next year. So is the 2 to 3 million this year? And then next year we have the 3.3. Is that my understanding?
No, to clarify, the 3.3 is what was allocated toward the program, and that will just depend on the TOT revenue that comes in. The NCIP will get 16% of that. So currently, the estimate is that it's going to be about $3.3 million. Of that, as we've discussed, Rick was saying, there's overhead, there's other things that come out of that total. So we'll have to determine what the actual amount available toward projects will be. And we're pretty confident at this point that it will be between $2 and $3 million.
Okay, I got
it's
it.
a wide range.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, I don't see anyone waving at me or hands up. Okay, let's move on to item 6, which is discussion of the NCIP program funded project. I'm assuming this is just a review of the list of the projects that were not defunded that are still in process.
That's correct. Yes. And we submitted with the application, with the agenda, the list that we had prepared in March for the Finance Committee, subcommittee, and it really hasn't changed all that much, to be honest. There were several projects that have been completed in the time. One was the Pine Street 800 block drainage project that went with the Hawthorne Irving curb extensions and the Hawthorne McClellan curb extensions. And then the Casa Verde Helvick Portola McNear intersection improvements was the construction project that was completed at that time too. Otherwise, all the other projects are still active and in various stages of being worked on.
Does anyone have any questions on any of those projects that are still active? Dave?
I have a question. I just want to make a comment, and very laudatory. We were surprised here in Deer Flats for the construction projects to improve safety of our intersection that we looked at a couple of years ago, and the resurfacing of Mule Deer Way. And I was kind of surprised. I got a notification from Tom that, they're getting ready to come in and start doing work. And I just want to thank Tom, and who was it, Jeff Ray, Tom, that helped
Yes.
out with that. And just across the board, the intersection improvement was a little controversial here, but now that it's done, everybody sees the value in it, and I think everybody's happy with it. But just Tom went the extra mile, and I just want to say my hat's off. Everybody's very thankful. We want to send an official thank you from the Deer Flats neighborhood, government board of directors. But just want to say thanks. That was really not expected, and a nice surprise that went even budget shortfalls this year. So thank you.
Jean?
So if I'm reading this correctly, the Casanova Oak Knoll tree study project is on the active list, and it was $15,000. So where in fact is it?
Gene, I'll have to get an answer for you. That's one that Parks is working on right now. So let me get an update for
I think
you.
Richard can give you an update.
Oh,
Richard?
Yeah, the last meeting I had was in February, and I've not received any word since. Trying to get a scientist or a lab technician to come to Monterey and just take the samples, and I know in my neighborhood, since we met last, we've lost over 20 oaks. I don't mean little oaks, I'm talking landmark oaks, at least 20. And situations become quite dire, but I've received no information whatsoever.
Okay. And so Tom, if you could get a formal where it stands and get that out to us, would be great. Hans, you were having, I thought I saw your hand go up at one point.
Yeah, I just wanted to know of all the active projects that were not defunded, whether there were any cost overruns or whether we should expect cost overruns for any of those projects before we start chomping too much at our future budget.
And currently, there have not been, we haven't had to go back to council for any additional funding for any of the approved or the completed projects, the construction ones. There are other ongoing studies. The traffic calming plans are going to be before city council next month. That's for Fisherman's Flats and where's the other one? I was going to say Villa Del Monte, but I don't think that's correct. Oh, Laguna Grande. Anyway, we haven't had to stop anything that was begun that's been active. We haven't had to pause it because we're out of funding on that. So everything is still moving forward as planned.
Are there any projects you think are in danger of being grossly underfunded?
Not at this point, but as we'll probably see when we go through the list of defunded projects from last year, the cost estimates, and we were even talking about it just several minutes ago, need to be updated for many of the projects because they've been prepared several years ago. So everything is volatile right now. The cost of construction is going up. I've heard recently it's coming back down. Everything's strange. So we'll have to do a better job at honing in on it.
April, I see you figured out how to get your hand up. Let's see. You need to unmute, April.
Here we go. All right.
Yeah, perfect.
In looking at the NCIP project status summary report, when it says active projects, budget balance, 2,356,000, et cetera, does that mean the money has already been set aside and is available to complete those projects? That's not
Yes.
a part of the upcoming budget.
Correct.
Okay.
Those are ones that were funded. The money was not taken away from them.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Dennis.
So if I'm looking at the numbers right, 7.4 million, 30,000 rounded of projects was put on hold. 820,000, 819,701 of contingency was put in that hold pile. How much of that contingency fund of 820K relates to the projects that are still in process? Or was that contingency segregated for the projects that were put on hold?
Each of the projects, when it's approved by council, it comes with a 10% contingency. And so that has been covered for all of the active construction, the awarded projects that council has done. The contingency account from last year, I think we held back, $35,000 in it. So it used to be much higher than that. I think it was in the hundreds of thousands. So a lot of that was taken away and reallocated. At the moment, there are no projects that are in danger of being stopped for lack of funding. That answer the question, Dennis?
It does kind of. So Jamie, Rich and I are on a finance committee, and typically we review with the previous engineer what is the likely contingency needs for the projects that are going to be completed in the next year, which is above and beyond the 10%.
Okay.
So, we would periodically add to the contingency budget, knowing that we were going to blow past the 10%. It sounds like what the city did in pulling away the contingency fund may not have had knowledge of how that works.
Yeah, they basically defunded contingency.
Yeah, that's what I'm seeing. If I'm kind of going.
Oh yeah, it was on the list of what was defunded.
Yeah, because it's 11% of the total that they took away.
Yeah.
And when we start talking about defunded projects, Skyline participated in 12.5% of the total defunding, irrespective of the contingency. Wow, we've got a bigger share than I would have expected.
Yeah, any old projects are going to need to get re-estimated, and we're going to have to take a hard look at what we do with contingency to make sure those things get built.
Yeah, I mean, in our particular case, it goes back to 2009, and the underlying issue is the water runoff and the silt runoff into the ocean, and that was $880,000 worth of projects put on hold. It was already 12 years old. Can you imagine what the construction cost is going to be?
Oh, baby.
That's huge.
Any other questions for staff? Does our one member of the public wish to have any questions? No, seeing none, then we'll move on to the next item, which is the defunded projects. And I guess my question here, this is just the list, because then under 8, we're going to discuss what to do about it. Is that correct, Tom?
Yes,
Okay.
that is it. So in the agenda packet, there were a list of, I believe it was 89 projects that were defunded last year. And I can show that on the screen if anyone would like to see it. That includes the contingency account as well, including
And the opportunity buying account.
Yes. Yeah. And then the projects. So these would be the projects that we expect us to discuss or begin discussing this evening on how to reprioritize which ones will be coming forward. So I don't know, I guess at this point, it's just a presentation of the actual project. Did anyone have any questions regarding the projects? And I'll do my best to answer them. I'm sorry, because I'm still the newest person here, I think, so. But
Well, no, you're over a year old, Tom, but
it doesn't mean I've
didn't have
done
to do
much in
anything
that.
Any questions on projects that are on the list before we dive in under 8 and start talking about how we might want to deal with projects? April.
Just have a quick question. I feel pretty strongly about looking all of those, and I mean, my alternate and I were looking over it for quite a long time today and yesterday. And there are things that go back to 2000. I think the only fair way would be not to overlook anybody's project, not to look over anybody's neighborhood, but go through them one by one and see if they still hold a priority for the neighborhood that submitted them, or if they hold a priority if they're a citywide or whatever. Because to just jump through them isn't fair, because I'm sure people put in a lot of effort. I mean, some of them got postponed mainly because of either lack of staff time, or I don't know how to put it nicely. Things were just put off that we would urge onward, and they just never got done.
Yep. I think so. Before we get into what we're going to do about them, which is kind of where we are at the moment, and believe me, everyone's going to have a chance to do it. Why don't we move on to item 8? And I kind of want to set the stage. Or Dave and Jean, do you have questions as it relates to process or a specific project?
Yeah, I just have a quick question, Rick. So all the projects that were put on hold, they've been previously prioritized, right? They're not just a clump of projects that, I mean, we were approved, right?
They
by
all
council.
were approved. That list, because I asked for it to be included on there, includes what round they were approved,
Okay,
how many points they got, and what year they were approved.
that was my question. Was
Yeah.
there any kind of ranking to those? And
Well, that was within each year. I
Yeah.
actually have an idea I'm going to present on
Okay.
how one approach we may wish to take, which I think I got a feeling a lot of you will like. Hopefully no one dislikes it, but if you do, please blast me about it. It's not an issue.
yeah, you
But
answered my
I
question.
put a lot of thought into this to try to keep us moving so we don't spend all night here. But yeah.
Okay.
Jean, do you have a question on a project, or you're on mute?
I'll just comment after you present.
Okay, great. Tom, while we move on to item 8, you want to put the spreadsheet I sent you up on the screen?
Yes, let me share my screen right now.
What I did was I took what we got in a PDF, converted it into a spreadsheet so it can be sorted by things like round and year and number of points. And to me, I agree with April and a lot of others. We spend a lot of time on everything, and unless we want to really start duking it out over every single project, to me, I think there is a natural priority based off of what round was it funded and how many points it got. So what this is everything that's on that list sorted by, well, first base allocation projects that have not been built yet up at the top. Because after all, a neighborhood wanted it so bad, they spent their base allocation on it. After that, it's in order by round and points. And if there's a tie, it goes by the oldest first. So with all the projects that are on that list, if we were to go this route, the number one priority to move after base allocations would be the Monterey Vista El Camino del Norte streetlight, because it passed in round one with 125 points. Then comes the accessible beach mats and so forth. So we get, basically, we would be working on everything that was funded in round one first, then things that were funded in round two next, and so forth. So in effect, combining each year's priorities into one overall priority. And I mean, there's some challenges with doing this, because there's at least one project where the phase two comes before the phase one. So there's some things that would have to get worked out. But my thought is, whatever amount we have to work with, we decide, goes against whatever the amount is down the list until it gets to that dollar amount. Those are the projects. And then the next year, as we have another chunk, it goes, works the next group on down until everything's funded. So, I mean, again, this is one potential approach. It could be 9 million different ones. I just wanted to try to get discussion focused a little bit and going, but again, there's no magic to having to be this way. Gene, I think you already had your hand up. That's my spiel. It's up
Yes.
to you.
Am I
all.
unmuted? Am I unmuted?
Yes, you're unmuted.
Okay, so I appreciate all the time and thoughtfulness, and I think it won't take too much time for us all to agree. We recommend, NCIP recommends the projects. They go to the city council, who votes to accept them. And when that's done, we have approved projects. And under the charter, on page 18, under 18 of our manual, the projects under project implementation and construction, projects approved in one fiscal year should be completed by the conclusion of that year. What I read that to mean is we should go in chronological order. And so I would differ with your list in that I think chronology should have more weight than I appreciate in your list. Also, I agree with April that I'm not sure we have any authority to bring our own opinions into the list short of the manual procedure for disappropriating projects. And if we were to follow disappropriating projects, they're either unfeasible or withdrawn. And if they aren't feasible, the staff comes to us and presents why they aren't feasible, and we work it out. And if a neighborhood no longer wants a project, the representative presents that. So short of that, I don't see that we have a whole lot of volition once we get a priority list. And I think the priority list was done by the councils in chronological order, yes, under the weighted structure that we've implemented.
Okay. Dwayne.
Yes, I just noticed though that you started, although, I like the idea of going with, what round it was done in or when it got approved, but as Jean mentioned, you started with 2020. Shouldn't we start with the oldest first?
Yeah.
It's up to, I took it highest number of points. We could do oldest by point order. I mean, it's really up to the committee. The idea being, we've got a spreadsheet now, we can sort it any way that we decide we want to have it be at the will of the committee. I did that as trying to say overall from the standpoint of number of points in round, so that we wouldn't be building something that maybe passed at the end of round 4, and you got something that got a ton of points in round 1. But that's totally up to us as a committee to decide if we want to do age first, followed by any direction we're wanting to do. And I would agree also that we can't take anything off. We can't defund anything unless the aspect that was just read was the thing. So we can set the order to get worked on, but those are all valid approved projects. So.
Okay, thank you.
Hans, and then Kurt. And
Yeah,
then Dave.
quickly, I just wanted to, although I support absolutely all the base projects, since the court ruling, are we still allowed to approve base projects? I just want to make sure we don't get into legal issues there.
We're not funding new projects. These
Yeah.
are ones that were previously approved.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're not going to
Well,
run into
we ought to
anything.
check with the attorney because
Yeah, okay.
technically we are
Maybe.
refunding, but
Yeah.
I think it's a good point. Yeah. And so Tom, if you could check with the city attorney on whether or not we can refund those base projects. Kurt.
Agreed. I mean, I did similar what you did. I sorted it by the number of points and the date. But then I thought about it a little bit more and I said, what about safety? And I looked at it from the point of view if it had anything to do with like street lighting or sidewalks or pedestrian crossings, those drainage, those types of things. I did that. And I looked at those projects, and when I did that, it came out to almost $2.6 million just from the safety aspect. Looking at, like the street lighting in over by the fairgrounds, those drainage projects. And if we looked at it from just a safety point of view, that's already $2.6 million. So maybe we take it, what you did, Rick, and I looked at is by the points, by the date, but also add one more, and that is a safety contingency. And those would have higher priority than the other projects.
Okay, and then see here, I'm assuming this is giving it to me in order. So Dennis, and then Jamie, and then April.
Okay.
So Rick, if you took the ones that you have on this list plus the base allocations that people put to that, what's the aggregate dollar amount?
Well, this is the entire list.
No,
It's just sorted.
if you just took the ones in the base.
Oh, I unfortunately, I don't, hold on. I got to figure out how on my computer to get back over to open up the spreadsheet, but
Whoever's presenting it, just highlight that area from that section in the lower right-hand corner on Excel. It'll tell you what the sum is.
yeah, just.
Actually, if you just highlight it down there at the bottom of the spreadsheet where it says average, account, and sum, it'll tell you what the total is.
Okay, there we go. The average is 10,800, count is 12. The sum is 129,600, so 129,600.
So that's what we're looking at in base allocation. If we just did all the number ones over there, what would that add up to be?
And that's first round project, basically.
Yeah, just take
So just the first round or on top of the base? I'm going to put this in.
We know what the base is, so let's just do first round.
Okay, and that would be.
I think you want to add the
You went too
balance.
far. Yeah, there we go.
Just the balance, not the budget.
So that by itself is 2.2 million, 2.172.
Yes.
Yeah.
So some hybrid of those two approaches is going to suck up every bit of money that we have.
Well, that's where I was saying was, I think we also, the decision we need to make is, do we want Andy to have any money go to new projects? Kind of a yes or no, and if so, then, you know, what's the break? Or we say, yeah, it's a decision we'll need to make at some point here. Yeah.
Can we vote on that tonight, or do we have to wait?
We
for that
can
to-
vote on that tonight.
I move that we not fund any new projects, and we work on the past projects so that we can
Hey,
promise to the public.
Well, we do need to have public finish our discussion, then have open to public, and then do motions, Dennis. So you could hold on to that for a little bit.
I lowered my hand, yield my time to the gentleman from Wisconsin.
Okay, Jamie.
All right. So thank you for putting this together for us. I've been looking at this and trying to be blind. Whatever projects are on there, they're on there. I'm not looking at mine. I'm not looking at choices. I think safety is a guidance that's been given to us by the city council that for us to choose to take up or not. It's not anything about the NCIB mandate, which is more about the mitigation of impacts on the neighborhoods from the funding source of tourism. And chronology has never been used as a priority. So it's very interesting to see that it's in the manual. And so I think it's important that we understand that we have never had a priority in how these have been accomplished. And we do have a priority when we vote, but I want to point out there's a little bit of a tilting in that. We always make sure that everybody gets some funding. That's really been the priority when we vote every voting night. And then after we've seen that everybody is getting some funding and getting some things going, then we go off and focus on big projects. So this, by its very nature, kind of slants away from some of the big projects, which some neighborhoods may be noticing. But I will put to you, we have had a focus in the last years, all the years we were doing stuff, on big projects. And so maybe getting back to just what was a priority and getting it done on those priorities isn't a bad thing. It kind of gets back to the philosophies that we use on voting night. And then final comment, I'll be interested in talking more about using all the money or not. If we were to use all the money and not have any room for new, we won't have any job for the NAP committee for a number of years. So anyway, so in summation, I like this.
Okay, April, and then Richard.
Yes. Okay. I hate to say it, each individual project and at least giving it some point in time and saying, okay, is this one still wanted by neighborhood X? Is this one still valid? I don't think we can just sort of, I like your idea of one in some manner, but I think we're going to shortchange somebody. And I don't want to do that. And as Jamie said, we're getting back to what's important to the individual. It's the little stuff. We've sort of lost track of that in doing some of the bigger items. And sometimes you do the little things and people are really excited. Oh, I see that improvement. So I just don't see any way out of going through each one. And when we've got what's our time limit? We've got the rest of the year, right?
You broke up. I couldn't hear the last comment.
We have till the rest of the year. We're not in a particular hurry. So if we take our time to go through them, sort of do a compromise of what you've lumped together and go through the individual ones, it wouldn't have to take us forever, but I think we owe it to
the two different given that it's not going to be built until next year, I think it's a true statement if we're not in a hurry. The one thing that it's going to take time though is to re-estimate And it probably would be smart to have the idea of what we want to work on, you know, the top priority ones first, so those can get re-estimated to see what they really are. Because there's a whole lot of projects to try to do them all at the same time, but that's just my initial thought on the aspect. But on timing, no, I mean, do we have to come to a conclusion tonight? No. Richard. And then Jean, and
Yes,
then back to Jamie.
I want to talk about what Jamie brought up, and that's priorities. In our process, we go from January to about May, dozens of people testify, the staff testifies, we all talk about all the meetings we have. And on voting night, we have this round one, and we make it our highest priority. And it may not be the one that gets built. And I want to bring up, why do we do the priority if city staff doesn't take it in the order that we pass it in? That is something that we haven't really discussed, where number one project for 2018 may never get looked at. And what I like about your list, Rick, is when we do vote, eliminating base allocation, because that's no longer given to us. But when we do vote and we have all that testimony, the most important projects that we consider are in round one. And Jamie's also right that we tend to want to spread round one around rather than do the big projects all at once. But I want to bring up an issue April brought up, and that is some projects are out of date. Some projects don't have neighborhood consensus anymore. And some projects are done. And there's one on the list I can give money back because I can tell you it's done. But 3 neighborhoods gave base allocation to it. So we can talk about this later. It's only $7,000 coming back, but it's already in process with the North Fremont improvements, the grant we got, and the Forte Trail. So the items that we listed in 2015 are already accomplished or are about to be accomplished. So the bottom line is, I think this list that you gave, Rick, makes the most sense and the less controversy on going through it. But I agree with April that we need to go through the defunded list and have the neighborhoods say which ones are closed out, which ones, let's just say a majority of the people don't want it now. New neighbors, I don't know about you, but we had 30 houses sell in the last 12 months. So we got new people, and I don't know what their feelings are going to be on, let's say, a traffic calming project. So, but basically, I'd like to go ahead with what Rick presented in this list and then go through in following meetings, neighborhood by neighborhood, and let's reevaluate these and make sure we have consensus and we have proper costs, because we're about to get cost shock. Thank you.
Okay. Jean, and then Dennis.
I think we should look at it in 2 descriptors. One is the projects. 2 is the funding. Funding is going to be an issue and needs to be looked at. As to the projects, I say again, legally, we have already done this. We have already prioritized them each year. They have been presented to the city council, who has approved them. We already have a list, and we have a process for disappropriating that we could follow. I think we tread on very thin ice to go back and look at each one. I think we should follow the guide and the policy and the procedure manual, and each neighborhood, through their representative, can suggest that they now don't want it. But that's the policy that should be followed for disappropriating one. If staff says we can't do one is not feasible anymore because we now have a new intersection that was made in the meantime, we look at that project. But I fear strongly that we are treading on legal thin ice if we do anything but follow our policies and procedures in the list that communities have spent hours and hours on. It's not our business to decide whether we still want them, other than through the deappropriation process.
Actually, these all have been already deappropriated, so.
No,
the
they've been
question is,
defunded. They have been defunded. The funding
Which
has
is-
been taken.
Yeah.
That's different to me.
No,
And
it's true. They have not been removed as projects.
They
There's
have
just
not
no
been.
money for the project.
Right,
Correct.
so to me, nothing touches the list of ranked and chronologically ranked projects. All that is in question is the funding. So yes, staff has to look at refunding, re-estimating the costs, and then we do the projects that we can afford to do.
Okay.
Simple.
Dennis?
There are some economic realities here. If we have $3 million to deal with and we defunded the commissions or the contingency, a good piece of that is going to go towards having an appropriate contingency for the projects that we have to do. I think it's, Tom, you'll have to correct me on this, but if we say, oh my God, we're going to consider every single one of these projects, you have to go back and re-estimate every single one of these projects. So if we don't cull the list, our overhead for doing rebidding is going to be huge. And the realities of that situation are we would rebid it, only to set it aside for another 5 years and come back to it later and rebid it again. So it's wasted money to go through and analyze every one of these projects on what they're going to cost if we have a finite purse, if you will. And I'd love to buy them a new Mercedes, but I can't afford it. I'm going to have a little Ford. That's where we're at. We can't look at all of these and think we're going to be driving a Mercedes. So I would suggest that we take a hybrid of the suggestion of let's look at safety and let's look at Rich's list, look at that aggregate funding, which is off the top of my head without looking at the numbers is about $3.5 million more than we can spend. Each neighborhood goes back and looks at that list to see if there's any of those that are no longer fundable. So maybe we can get down to a base that is what we can afford. And then let's examine that list and see if we move forward so that the public works guys don't have to go crazy trying to analyze all of these. Because I think that would save us a fair amount of money, not having to re-examine all those projects. Because the reality is, if we do that effort, it's going to be a waste of time and money. Let's get the most done we can get with the money we've got so we can get the projects that we promised the public we were going to go do done.
Richard, is your hand up again, or you just not put it down?
Word.
Okay, actually, you're putting it down. Jamie?
I think that what I'm hearing is there's a desire to be sure that there's still neighborhood interest. And there's a desire to be sure that it's re-estimated, but balancing that with, it's very hard to get the neighborhood to evaluate the entire list. And we don't want to spend money on re-estimating the entire list. So I think both of those concerns can be addressed with us choosing a methodology for the order of the list. And then once we have that methodology, we've got smaller bites to break off and work on. We're going to work off on a year's worth of estimating, and we're going to work on a year's worth of going back to the neighborhood and making sure all those are still valid. And if we think that this chronology is good, but we have a concern that it's not allowed, we can make a proposal that we pick this chronology, and then city attorney can opine whether that's right or whether we have to do something else, i.e. Do it in order by year. So we can tonight, I believe we can make a proposal and then just do the research. We're not going to get in trouble by coming up with our own idea.
Steve? Wintry, then Olivia, and then Jean.
Thank you, Rick. I just wanted to echo a couple points. Once again, Steve Witry, Public Works Director, thanks for being in here and helping us, helping the city in this process. I think that one of the things that as staff, what we're really looking for is that process by which we can go about. You know, I don't want to steer anybody in a different direction because this is going to be a tough decision. But for large intents and purposes, when the council defunded the projects, they eliminated the projects. And we can certainly check with the city attorney's office to see what that status is, certainly, but that shouldn't impact how you all want to prioritize the list, whether it was on a process that was base allocation or whether it was a number one voter project. I think what we're looking for as staff tonight is a way that you all can come to a way that we can present to the city attorney's office in a process echoing what Dennis mentioned. We do not want to estimate 89 projects or whatever it is. If we can get a chunk at a time and run into that number and identify where we're at, it's going to be very efficient for our time. And then the other thing I just wanted to remind folks is that not all the projects were defunded. So if we have a project like fuel reduction, that's important, that's been, as long as I've been here, very important to many of the neighborhoods, that's not on this list. So if we decide that if you decide that you only want to go by the list, projects like fuel reduction won't be done until this list is completed. So I think that it's a great discussion you're having, and I just wanted to offer those little clarifications and hear more information from staff's perspective. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Steve. Olivia.
Yes. Rick, first of all, I want to thank you for the magnificent job you're doing for us tonight. I'm very impressed and extremely grateful.
Thank you, Olivia.
A question I have, do we have the authority, if by group consensus we wish to remove one of these projects because it's not high in safety? One I'm looking at is the pickleball study. I know when we're going through these projects, we're going to be facing, as Rich pointed out, severe financial difficulty. And if we decided that there were one or two things here that we really don't need in this time and space, could we drop a project? Or should we? Or is that a legal issue also? I just don't know. But to me, looking at this pickleball study would be very, very low on my priority at this point in time. Thank you.
In general, the manual that guides us, and I think Jean quoted it to a point,
What you doing, Mom?
is basically the only way a project comes off the wall, per se, if we think about it from the original, is the applicant withdraws the project, the council chooses not to fund it, or it's a duplicate, or it can't be built, or it's not in the city. So if we're assuming and we're viewing this list as approved projects by NIP, no, we would not be able to take it off the list. Now, we could choose to move it further down on the priority. That's different. Okay. But it's on the list because we're viewing these as they've been approved. Now, technically, none of them may be a valid thing, and technically, we might have. One way would be start from scratch with all these. I think I don't know that anyone necessarily wants to go that route because we spent a lot of time and effort through the years, prioritizing voting, and these all passed. I think everyone has some projects on here that aren't as high in their mind as others. And there will always be that. But we set in the manual a long time ago, the applicant withdraws it, council doesn't fund it. Basically, it's the only way it doesn't happen. Now, we're unusual because we're setting the order it's going to get done. So we could say it doesn't get done for 4 years, but that's a whole different discussion. It's still on the list to happen.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Jean, and then Kurt.
So a sub discussion is the frustration that I've felt, and I think most of you have felt, in that we feel we're ranking projects and then staff implements them in the order that they want. I'm not talking about economies of scale or adding the CIP projects. I'm talking about the frustration of it takes years to get something done that appears to not be a favorite of the then manager of the whole thing. So, and I have never felt that that should be with staff. I do think there is a chronological priority list and then a ranking within each year. And I'm finding support for that in the policy and procedure manual. And I don't know any other way we should be doing it. So I think this is an opportunity to embrace that again. Why should I work so hard helping my community on a project? It gets passed and then it's 8 years later and nothing's happened. That to me is disrespectful. It's not following the policy and procedure. It's also kind of a waste of my time. I could do other things. So I think we have to look at that fundamental question of chronological priority. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Kurt, and then Dave. You're muted, Kurt. Okay. No, you just remuted your, okay. There. I don't hear you, but it does not show that you're muted.
Yeah.
Still can't hear you. I think you turned your mic off, Kurt.
Aw.
Nope. The joys of Zoom.
Ah.
Tell you what, Kurt, we'll come back to you. See if we can get your, because we can't hear you. Dave, you want to go ahead?
Kurt, can you hear me?
Yes.
I don't know if chat is available. I don't see it here, but that might be an option for Kurt. After listening to Steve Witchery's remarks, I think there is another option. I'm not recommending it, but I'm just putting it forth as it could be another option. Is it seems like these all have been defunded, whatever term we want to use, and we scrap it. And we start from scratch. And those that are important, I realize it's a reduplication of effort we've already done, but times have changed. I mean, we came out a year of COVID, and you know, we could clear the slate, and that would really determine what's really a priority because we'd see those things come back. But I'm just saying that might be an option.
Okay. Thank you, David. Kurt, let's see if we'll try again. I don't know why, because you were fine before.
Yeah, he's fine here.
You know sign language?
Ah.
Oh, sorry.
If Kurt tries to log off and log back on, it might get him back into the.
He did that already once.
Oh.
He just did it. So we'll give him a minute. Meantime, let's go out to public. Does our one member of the public have anything they wish to add? Nope. I'll close public hearing. And Dennis, you've got a hand up?
Yeah, if Kurt unplugs and replugs in his microphone, it could be that it got partially disconnected by movement or whatever. I run several video meetings a day, and that's usually what the problem is.
Actually, I think he's off at the moment.
Okay. Probably doing a reboot.
Yeah, I think he's rebooting. Well, I'm gonna make a. I am mixed on age of project taking priority over how many votes and round that it was done. Because in that scenario, and I do echo Gene's frustration of we prioritize things and it seems like those priorities get ignored for various reasons. So I just have an issue of putting higher something just because of age, maybe that was funded in the fourth round, where we're scraping by looking for projects over something that should have really already been built because it was the number 1 or 2 priority in a more recent year, but for whatever reason hasn't been built yet either. So I struggle with that combination of those two things. I don't know about, it concerns me not having money being able to go to fuel reduction, given where the state is going. And yeah, if we do 100% dedicated to old projects, we're not putting anything aside and we're hoping city council will find money elsewhere. But other than that, I mean, that's just, what I'm struggling with on it. I think as each neighborhood, we should take a hard look at what is in our neighborhood and see if there is still consensus of doing it. And if the person who was the applicant even still wants the project, it should get looked at in each. But now I've got a whole lot more hands coming up. So Lee, I'll go with you because we have not heard from you yet on this. Then we'll go to Richard, Dwayne, and Dennis.
I'm soaking a lot of this in, and I'm very mixed as far as which way to go. But the one thing that does stand out to me is your comments that you just made regarding fuel reduction. We are in the wildfire season. And right now, if we don't protect what we have and continue that fuel reduction, we won't have these projects to do.
Yeah.
So it's a really tough thing as far as which way to go. Also, the other thing is in 2000 and then 2020, I guess is the last one, priorities were different. They were different all through those years. I think maybe the one that was the single one that stands out for every year was safety. And along with that was the fuel reduction. So I don't know if it's necessary. I don't know which way to go with the rounds and the points or the year. I think we need to look at the individual projects. I know it's a pain in the drain, but I also don't want to lose that fuel reduction, particularly where I happen to live, and you all have a lot of trees. Dennis, Skyline, there's a lot of trees all over that we need to continue the fuel reduction, or we have no city to do any projects.
Yeah.
Okay, Richard.
Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
Yeah, the thing that I don't want to waste, and that's what all of you and everybody that's participated in this program in the last 10 years, and all the inputs and all the various council members and all the various staff, we worked hard to get this list approved. We sorted a lot of projects. I agree totally. We need to eliminate these space allocation projects that have been hanging around. It's a small amount. And then I want to look at round 1, those high priority projects over the years, and restore that funding. In addition to that, we need to look at up-to-date cost, up-to-date contingency for it. And because this is an historic year, I will add, I want a fuel reduction project this year because the problem is enormous, and I fear for what could happen to our city with one cigarette butt in our forest. So that's the only new project I want to look at. But I think if we focus on round 1, that the staff could reevaluate those costs and we can move forward. But if this money is not till July next year, I asked Steve Wittry, how does it, I don't know where we're at on fuel reduction, how much money is left, and how much we've done before we start talking amounts. But that should be at the next meeting, a good update by the forester on what's been done, what's left, and how much they need. but I just think of all the hours we spent together and all the people in Monterey that participated. I don't want to start Xing out that those were careful decisions. And I know round one were all well-conceived, well-supported projects. And after we get that, I want to look at round two. But before we start chucking everything out, think about the time and what we invested in this program. We should not waste it. What we did was good. We did good work and we're proud of it. And we shouldn't sit here second guessing each other. But I will go through the list. And if there's a project that no longer has support or is finished or is infeasible, I will, at the next meeting, ask for it to be defunded. But I want to move on. So I want to move on with a base allocation round one, fuel reduction, and decent costs and a decent contingency. I'm not going to provide those figures. I'm going to expect staff to provide those figures. Thank you.
Okay. Dwayne?
Richard got most of my wind, but I agree, round one, and I also agree, fire reduction. If we don't do it, Mother Nature will, and we know how she handles that. And then, but in round one, rank oldest to newest would be my recommendation. Thank you.
Dennis?
Are we ready for a?
We've
motion?
closed the public hearing, so we can entertain a motion.
I'd like to move that.
We've got about 4 other people with hands up to speak, but yes.
I'd like to move that we move to the city attorney the allocation of base funds, whether or not that can be utilized legally or whether or not that is funds to be returned to the process. I would suggest that we, or my nomination or whatever, would be that we take Rick's list and the safety list, which I assume includes the forestry issues, and say that those are the projects that we're going to consider, and that we should, as a committee, look at those projects to see if any of those should come off. But I think we're wasting our time if we go beyond that, because we don't have the purse to carry out much more than that.
Okay, just so you know, on fuel reduction. The fuel reduction was not defunded, so it's not on the sheet or whatever. And there, as of a couple of months ago, there's only $30,000 left. So in your motion, there is no fuel reduction on a safety list.
So I modify my motion before I finish it, that we fund this year or we consider to fund this year as a funding this year, what the city forester comes back and reports that he needs in the next meeting, and that he be tasked to do so.
Is there a second to the motion? Which, let me see if I can understand and repeat the motion. Dennis is making a motion to do a couple different things. One, basically, we're deciding to fund base allocation and first priority with a city attorney weighing in about the intricacies of the base allocation list. And where you lost me was the safety aspect.
So one of the other members said that there was about 2.6 million when you consider the safety items as opposed to the top ones. Kirk?
Yeah, I don't know which those are because we don't have them identified anywhere. So
yeah, but if you two guys got together and put that list together and then send it back out to everyone on the committee to consider whether or not there are projects within that scope that should not be built, then we're not wasting a whole lot of time with the city engineers trying to estimate projects that aren't ever going to get done anyway, because we don't have the purse for it.
I might make a suggestion that as an initial, we do round one, make it round one, and then we can have a review for other safety projects that should also be considered, and we bring those back.
Well, perhaps we should all review the list and come back to the next meeting.
Or we do that for the next meeting. I mean, you're the one making the motion, so I'm just trying to make sure everyone understands and to see if there is a second.
I modified the motion as previously stated, and I hope the secretary does that because I'm lost.
Right, is there a second to the motion? Olivia, are you seconding the motion? I'm lip reading yes.
Yes.
Okay, Olivia is the second on the motion. Okay, under discussion, I still have 4 hands up, so Jamie, then actually tell you what, let's see if we can get Kurt able to speak.
Okay, can you hear me this time?
Yes.
Hey! Don't ask me what happened. I left and came back in and finally worked. Okay, so I think I'm agreeing with everything that the motion is, except I believe we need to really ask the city attorney, by the city council be funding all of these projects, are they actually projects, if you know what I mean?
Yep.
Did the city council, by defunding them, cancel all these projects? And so what we're really looking at is bringing back old projects as new projects, if you will.
Okay.
But I'd really like to get the reading from the city attorney. That's it.
All right. Jamie, and then Jean, and then Steve Wittry.
Thank you. I am not supporting the motion on the floor because of the first round and the safety already go through every single dollar we have. And the safety doesn't address a lot of what we've talked about. But I'm going to propose something a little bit different. I think what I heard is we all agree that the priorities represented by the first round or the points makes a lot of sense. NIP has had and CIP has had a tradition of always putting a little bit more on the pile. We've always put new projects into the pile when we knew all the old ones weren't built. And so I think the concerns about safety, the concerns particularly about fire reduction, would probably be best met by saying something like, I'm going to take 75% of the money I have available and work down my priorities as they exist on the list. And I'm going to take 25% of the monies I have available and make them available for new things that may be a priority now, like fuel reduction. So that way the committee has a chance to make sure that the emergencies get to the top of the list, the safety emergencies get to the top of the list, but you still continue to respect the priorities and work down the list. Because we're going to be working for many years, and Rick's first priority ideas and safety already are taking up close to 2 years worth of funding. So that I would suggest instead Rick's plus a set aside of 25% for new ideas.
Gene, it's not Rick's. I just put a list in one way of doing it. So yeah.
The sorted list on voting.
Okay. Thank you. Gene.
Well, in making the proposals or making the motions, we're rather practicing what we believe. I don't think we're close to a real proposal, if I may tell you what you're thinking. But I want to practice saying, had we had funding in 2020, and if we had had funding this year, fuel reduction would have been at the top of the list. We passed that unanimously. So I applaud struggling to figure out how to express it, but I'm not sure I want to call them new projects. I'm not sure how to do it. I'm not sure whether we should say we have a contingency, and due to statewide emergencies with wildfires, we want to throw the contingency funds at it. I really think we should keep struggling without motions tonight and really think about this. Thank you.
Steve.
Yeah, it may be a little bit moot right now, but I just wanted to let folks know, in answer to Richard Richello's question, we'll get the information for what's left in the parks budget for tree fuel reduction. the city council, when they did approve their budget, approved 500,000 in the CIP. The CIP has not gone to council yet either. That was waiting on the budget to happen. The direction from council was to place 300,000 of that 500,000 towards fuel reduction. So I do not know. I have a text into Louis right now. We're going to report to the overall committee about where the balance is overall for fuel reduction, so the community knows where we stand. But I just wanted to let you know that the council is also concerned about fuel reduction and appreciate your efforts as well. 300,000 has been earmarked for that. For sense of comparison, in years past, it takes about twice that to get Justin and Louis comfortable for being ready for the storm season. So I just wanted to offer that little bit of information as you're deliberating.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Any further discussion of the motion? Richard?
Yes, what bothers me about the motion is the safety projects, because the list we got included things like a street light, maybe on the cul-de-sac. And I'm thinking about necessary crosswalks and dangerous intersections. And so the discussion on safety projects is so wide. So you may end up with round 1 projects, and then you have a round 4 project that was for a street light on a cul-de-sac that had not much support. It was right at the tail end of our voting. So I don't know what a true safety project is by what was discussed tonight. I'm a little uncomfortable adopting that motion because of that, because I don't have a defined list of what those safety projects are, and it isn't presented to me tonight. So, we're talking about stuff that's not going to get funded to July 2022. So we don't have that pressure tonight to make a decision like that. And I just heard from Steve Wittry that the council's already funded fuel reduction 300,000, and it sounds like they want 300 more. This is all new information that just comes out during discussion of a motion, which is inappropriate to me. I'll vote no on the motion because of that. I want more information. I want updated costs on especially round 1. I don't see why the base allocation projects that are previous to the city attorney's ruling on them being illegal, they would have been possibly in round 1. I don't know. They were a high priority for the neighborhoods. The one that I want to defund had 3 neighborhood base allocations on it, but it's going to take their consensus to remove it too. So I'll vote no on the motion because I would like to see a little more information. We're basically planning out next year in the next 3 minutes. So consider that, considering all the time we put into this.
Dennis? And then after Dennis, I've got my hand up.
Can I modify the motion to take out safety projects? Because I've asked for the city forester to tell us what he needs. And if he comes back with $12,000 or $12 million, it's what he needs. It's his judgment based on what's going on with the city and the forest. I know so far he basically, and his predecessors basically worked with what they got. They were always thankful for what NCIP put up for them to help monitor this forest. And I got to tell you, with this drought, this forest is in much worse condition than anyone would like to admit.
Dennis, can I make a suggestion since you're modifying your motion?
Mm-hmm.
That the motion be that we direct staff to re-estimate priority 1 and base allocation. City attorney weigh in on the base allocation projects. And we get an estimate from city forester on fuel reduction. And then we set another meeting to review those costs, that which are real. Also, between now and that meeting, neighborhoods look at the projects in their neighborhoods to see if there are any that people want to defund or whatever on that aspect. So that would be brought back at the next meeting. And it could be ones in that number 1 group. Likewise, if for that next meeting, anything that and member reviews as being highly safety oriented to, to put that forward at that next meeting. So we're not actually voting to fund any of them yet. We're directing staff to get real numbers for us for the priority one projects. So we really know what we have to work with at least those round one projects.
I accept your modification of my proposal, or I second it too.
Well, I'll second that modified proposal.
Okay.
Okay. Any further discussions on the modified proposal? Richard?
I lowered my hand.
Oh, okay.
I thank you for summarizing that, Rick.
Okay. No further discussion. We'll have a roll call vote, please. And it's a good thing this is being taped so that Alyssa can figure out what the motion really was.
Yeah, actually, Dennis, can we get you to restate the motion so we have exactly what it is?
Is that a serious question or?
Well, oh, it looks like Richard left, but we want to run roll call.
Yes, please.
Okie doke. Aguajito Oaks.
I abstain.
Alta Mesa.
Yes.
Casanova Oak Knoll. Oh, sorry, Richard, I need you to repeat. It was on mute. Casanova
Yes.
Oak Knoll. Okie doke. Deer Flats.
Yes, to the amended proposal.
Del Monte Beach.
Yes.
Del Monte Grove Laguna Grande.
Yes.
Downtown.
Yes.
Fisherman Flats.
Yes.
Glenwood.
Yes.
Monterey Vista.
I would, since Jean stepped off with her battery down, I will vote yes. If I have the power right now.
Well, you do. I hope she doesn't get mad at you.
I'll take that.
Okay.
Oak Grove.
Luce, you're muted.
Oak Grove.
Um,
Luce.
I say, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, if we can now.
I say yes.
Okay, thank you. Old Town.
Yes.
Skyline
Yeah.
and Villa Del Monte.
Yes.
Okay.
It's unanimous.
Just to let you know, Jean just must be on a phone somewhere listening because she just texted me yes.
Okay. I'm happy, Hans. I didn't want you to get in trouble.
I thought Olivia didn't vote yea or nay. She said pass.
Yeah.
May I-
Okay. So,
I
and
abstain.
Tom, you're clear of what marching orders?
Relatively clear. What I have is, you have just directed staff to re-estimate the base allocations in round one projects, send everything to the city attorney for review to confirm that the projects in the base allocation are still valid
Projects.
to be refunded. Yeah. We'll have the forester look at the fuel reduction projects to come up with a cost estimate to complete the study or to complete the work, the fuel reduction work.
Yep.
And then that any of the committee members would go to their neighborhoods prior to the next meeting and discuss projects that no longer need to be refunded, that can be removed from the list.
Okay. And we'll have to follow the correct process to do it. Yes.
Yes.
And it was also for committee members, if there are other projects they see on the list which they feel are high safety priority that were not round one, they'll bring it back for the next meeting as well.
Okay.
Next meeting would be, we'd have to have an estimate of when you guys would be able to have those estimates redone by. So we'll get back to everyone on when the next meeting would be related to that. Okay. Item 9 is kind of we talked about at the same time as item 8. They're really the same thing, which is recommendation to restore funding to project. So my feeling is we've really dealt with both of those. So let's, Dennis, you got your hand up.
So the list that was shown on the computer screen tonight was not distributed to us at this point. So I think that needs to be distributed so people can take that back to their neighborhoods to understand whether or not.
Yeah.
Or,
Well, just so everyone understands, that is the same list that we did receive.
Oh,
I
yeah?
just re-entered it in the spreadsheet so I could sort it. So it's in a different order.
but let's
But I
share
think,
that
yes,
sort of-
Tom, if you could get that spreadsheet out to everyone, it'd be great, so they can sort it to their own heart's content.
Yeah.
Would be helpful for everyone.
Yes, please.
Jamie.
And I would point out, the sooner folks go through the lists in their neighborhood or the projects in their neighborhood and get comments back, the better, because we don't want to spend time re-estimating something that has no support. So we don't have to wait until we're approaching the next meeting to get consensus from our neighborhood on those projects or get input.
Okay. Richard, then Kurt.
Yes, Tom, could we have the defunded projects printed and mailed to us? Some printers can't handle the Excel spreadsheet, mine included, and they make the print so tiny that it's impossible to read. So I was wondering if we can get a printed copy of the defunded projects.
Yes, we could do that. And I'll just throw it out to anyone else too. If anyone else is having the same issue, feel free to contact me or Alyssa and we'll get you something that will work for you. We could do that.
Okay. Kurt?
Just to follow up what Jamie was saying, have the neighborhoods go through and look at their projects, but also the neighborhoods should go through and look at the citywide projects and come back with whether or not those citywide projects also are could be considered dropped. Okay.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to NCI spokesperson reports, which Tom, normally that's up near the front because very often it's related to things we're be talking at the meeting. But the only report I need to do on that is there have been, in the last year, there have been 2 or 3 meetings that I have attended on behalf of NCIP, with one of them with Jamie and I forget who else, and some public ones where we had a financial subcommittee meeting to discuss potential process and funding. And I've had a couple of meetings with city manager and the mayor regarding, when we would be starting up again. And my feedback had been to them all along that until we had real money a budget to work with, it really made no sense to meet. And as a result, we're having this meeting because we finally did have a budget that was actually approved by a council to be moving forward so that we wouldn't just be spinning our wheels. That's all I've got on spokesperson reports. Any committee member comments? Kurt, is your hand still up or do you have a comment?
I forgot to put it back down. Sorry.
Okay, Richard.
Yes, like you, I've done many Zoom meetings over the last year and a half. This is one of the better run meetings I've done in 18 months. It looks like we're going to be doing this for a while, especially if any of you have family members that have immune issues. This pandemic is not over, and Pfizer just announced that they're coming out with a booster shot shortly. But until we can get spacing, I hope everybody understands that we can't get jam-packed in like we used to at the council until we get some guidance that it's safe. And all the research I'm reading, it's not. So I do appreciate this format. And Tom, thank you for putting this on. And it worked remarkably well considering the number of people that are involved. Thank you.
It will do Lee, then Jean, who's now as an attendee instead of a panelist, and then Dave.
Got it. I just want to say how nice it is to see everybody back. I mean, I've seen a few around town, and of course, we've had our masks on, etc. But I am so glad to see that we are all back. We're all ready and raring to go to continue out with our projects and our jobs. And I'm so glad to see everybody. Everybody's looking good.
Now
and
you can
healthy.
recognize me, Lee.
I got your voice. Thank you.
Okay, Jean. Tom, I'm not, Jean, can you hear me? I think we need to unmute Jean. She's listed, she's in the attendees section now.
Hi.
Yeah, we can hear
Okay.
you now.
So a couple procedural things that I would ask staff to work on. We need to figure out, we were all named for 4-year terms about 1.5 years or 2 years ago. Somebody has to figure out, do we all disappear at the end of 4-year terms and then all fresh people come in, which sounds like a lousy idea. We don't have our projects manuals online under NIP, under the city, Monterey city government. We need, I forget which years, but they're the most recent years, like 2020 and 2019. Those project manuals need to go online, please. We're still in the 2012 manual, policy and procedure manual, which, you know, is really so outdated after the grand jury report. So we have to work on that. And our term's going to be told. In other words, we were named 18 or 24 months ago for a 4-year term, but we didn't have anything to do for 18 months or something like that. So at some point, we're going to have to grapple with those questions. Thank you.
And just so you know, in the manual, the mayor has asked that and sent out the city attorney has sent, I believe, Jamie, you got a copy also? Jamie and I received copies of the latest version from the city attorney to do a quick read through. And so we should be able to be getting finished with a manual here in the not so distant future.
Great, thank you.
Yep. Dave?
I just want to say thanks to staff and Rick and whoever else contributed to prepare for tonight. I think it was a good presentation. I just appreciate the effort that went into it to explain everything. And I'm pretty happy with the way things turned out. And I agree with Lee. It's good to see everybody again, even if it's virtual. Thanks.
Olivia.
Yes, again, a big thanks to you, Rick, and to everybody involved in this splendid meeting. It is good to see my friends. I have to add, though, after listening to some of the doom and gloom regarding COVID, and I hope I'm just going to live long enough to be around next year when we do get to be more involved with this project. Thank you, and God bless you all.
Thank you, Olivia. Any other, Tom? I saw your hand up at one point.
Yeah, Rick, great job on giving us the format and the list that got our our discussion focused. That really helped to make it a productive meeting. Thank you very much.
And Hans, I see a hand, but not the normal color. So I don't know what's up.
Well, I don't know. Not the normal color. I don't know. I'm colored. Well, I vote that we buy Rick a desk light so we can see him.
This is my incognito mode.
I see. But no, I thought it was a great meeting, seeing everybody again. I think we have a good start. I think we do have a interesting road ahead, and yeah, I look forward to getting back into gear. And when are we meeting next time? Is this a good time to actually think about when our next meeting should be? Should it be a month from now or whatever?
I think we need to get a feel from the staff of how long it'll take them to re-estimate all those priority 1 projects. Tom, you have your hand up now. Okay, so I think I've said enough tonight as it is, so I've got no other comments, other than thank you all. And I think we've got at least a way to start moving forward, and staff's got their work cut out from getting some real numbers on these things. And the challenge is you're going to have to estimate what the cost is going to be to build it late next year, which will be the challenge.
Yeah, the contingency budget's gonna be going up.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's part of what I would expect us to be looking at before we actually, as part of any voting on what projects actually quote refund, will be the contingency at the same point in time. We want to make sure everything can get built. We will also need to, at the next one, decide, how we want to handle the opportunity buying fund as well. Okay, if there are no other comments, we are adjourned.